Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
So, do you want to find more speaking leads in less time? Do you potentially want to have a group of people to help you nurture those leads? Do you not want to have to waste the time poking around Google just to drum up some new business? Well, this is the episode for you. And in today's episode, Austin and I are talking with Jackie Lapin, the founder of Speakertunity, to unpack list generation and how to do it right, how to nurture those leads if you want to take it on yourself, and what resources exist out there to hire people to do this for you. Now, Jackie is the founder of Speakertunity, the ultimate speaker toolbox for things like lead generation, marketing collateral creation, training on how to do proper outreach, and partners with a VA workforce to help do the lead nurturing for you. Jackie is an industry professional with decades of experience in our world and unpacks everything she's learned over that time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in, learn about business development, learn about lead generation, and ideally learn about how to get some folks to help do it for you. As always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources, and we hope you enjoy this one. See you in there. And we're live. Jackie, welcome to Technically Speaking. It is awesome to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here with both of you guys. This is so much fun.
Oh man, I'm so glad. We hope that it is. You know, like as the hosts of the show, we have questions sometimes. Are we making this fun enough? But I think we are. So
yeah, I think we're doing okay. That's right. Let us know in the comments, guys.
Yeah, right.
So Jackie, this is going to be an awesome episode today. Very excited to pick your brain. You've created some awesome work in our industry with Speakertunity and list building and, you know, all of the marketing materials people need to successfully book gigs. But tell us about your background. Like, how did you get into this world? How did you identify the need for what Speakertunity does? Did you just wake up one day and say, wow, this is what I want to do when I grow up? Or did you stumble into it? What was that story?
Well, I'll tell you the backstory. You know, I started out at 11 years old when I decided that I was going to be a sports writer. There were no women sports writers then. And
heck yeah.
I became, at 20, I was at the Detroit Free Press. And 21, I was at the Associated Press and the front pages of the LA Times. And 22, I was at the Washington Post. I then went on from there to create one of the largest sports special events and cable TV PR agencies in America for over 20 years with a world-class client list. You know, everybody from the National Hockey League to the Golf Channel to Toyota Motorsports, and I can go on and on. Last thing I did was the worldwide poker phenomenon with the World Poker Tour. You know, at the same time, I was writing a couple of personal growth books, realized that my heart lay with making the people who are making the world a better place. And so I rebranded my company to Conscious Media Relations, and we started doing radio podcast tours, which we still do, where we introduce authors and leaders to 9,000 radio shows and podcasts with a minimum guarantee of 30 interviews. And about 8 or 9 years ago, some of those clients said to me, can you book me for speaking gigs? And we said, we don't want to do that, but we know where they are. Why don't we tell you? And that's how Speakertunity was born. We started getting all the information that we knew about speaking. At that point, it was just transformational leaders. And of course, now we serve a much wider community. But we started putting it into subscription services that we would feed people leads every single month. And then it just grew like crazy from there. And so now we have about 15 or 18 different products. And we really help provide curated speaking opportunities in various different areas. So, you know, it's everything from podcasts and radio shows to virtual summits, to virtual networking, to live and virtual meetings, to conferences, TEDx's. So we've basically gone out and done all the work for them.
Wow. So what I think I just heard you say was like you were doing this radio and podcast show booking, and you basically just got asked for this enough that you figured you might as well solve the problem. Is that right?
I'm one of those people that I believe, you know, the universe lays breadcrumbs for me. And I finally said, hey, the universe is trying to tell you something. Why don't you actually pay attention?
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's something to be said about market demand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what it really is for me. You know, I say I'm a serial pioneer. because I've always been ahead of the game doing something that nobody else does.
Mm.
But it's because I see a need. It's because I hear what the audience is telling me, what the prospective clients is saying, and then I'll go try to fill that. And that's what we've done right from the beginning. And that's what we've done at Speakertunity. Time somebody says, "Well, God, we need this," and I realize there's nobody else out there doing it. We just picked up and created it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
There's no better way
Man.
to find the products that the market needs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's
And,
exactly
and
right.
then we discovered that people needed training. Once we gave
Sure.
them these things, they needed to know, well, how do I book myself? So we
Yep.
created training programs. And then they said things like, well, okay, so what's a speaker one sheet and what do we do about that? And so we started creating speaker one sheets and podcast sheets and all the different resources that they need, speaker handouts and roll up banners. And now we help people with their slides. So we just wanted to make sure that if you're a speaker, we've got you covered so that you don't have to do any of that excess work and you're spending more time on stages and less time actually doing all of the background stuff that requires so much time and effort. So we call ourselves one-stop shopping for the speaker leader.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they
Yeah.
need too. I mean, no one wants to spend, countless hours researching all those individual needs. Like, if you know there was one place to go to get your leads and get your marketing collaterals done and know that it was done by a source that had context for our industry,
Yeah.
what more could you ask for?
Well, and during the pandemic, we realized too that everybody was speaking virtually. And that opened up a whole new world. And so we decided, for example, this is example how things get started in our little business. We realized that people could speak anywhere at meetings, venues, and associations all across North America. They didn't have to be within driving distance, and they didn't have to be paid, a fee to go all the way to Philadelphia from Los Angeles. So we developed niche directories. So if you just want to speak to women's business meetings all across the country, or entrepreneur meetings, or real estate, or spiritual centers, or parenting meetings, we just identified over 60 different places and options that recovery and addiction centers, for example. So it made it really easy for you to do that. So we got regional directories, we got niche directories, and so we want to make it sure that you weren't overwhelmed by your choices. You could just get the ones you wanted.
Nice.
Yeah. I know this is such a confusing and challenging subject for so many people. It's like I don't know what I don't know mixed with like where do I start?
Yeah.
It's a kind of a perfect storm of people feeling left confused, and I find that so many people like let themselves sit in that confusion and the resistance because there's no clear path forward, and then their business growth suffers because of that. So what I love about like what you do is that like at a bare minimum, you're giving them a jumping off point. You're helping them sort of see a path forward. And like, as well, I'm sure we'll get into this, but it's an iterative process, being able to do outreach and prospecting really well and knowing who you're best suited to help and stuff. But it starts with just taking some action. If you can remove a barrier of entry so that people are more willing to just start taking action, well, now that iteration process can set in and results start happening a lot faster.
And we did a couple of things that's really going to helping people out. First of all, if anybody really comes to us and doesn't really know because they're looking at all these different options, myself and Kelly O'Hara, particularly Kelly, as our speaker relations manager, she will actually walk you through and help you figure out what's the best. The other thing we did was we created a membership program. And you can come into that membership at the lowest level and get one product and become also exposed to speaker bookers in our speaker showcase. Or you can move up the line and you can get multiple products. Okay, I'm ready for all of these now. And now I want to go to the next level and I can get all of this. So we really figured that it was a simpler way to make it easy for people rather than looking at all of our resources on their own. So two options, get some help from us, or, just start at the lowest level of our silver membership. And you get to
Yeah.
choose whether you want conferences, 5,000 conferences. That's what we are now in Conference Connections. You can choose our radio podcast insiders for either life enhancing or B2B shows, or our virtual summits, or our kind of aggregator of all kinds of different things for the transformational leader. You can pick one of those, start there, and then move up. Makes it simple. So that's really where we're heading at this point.
Heck yeah.
For sure.
So one of the things you may have addressed this just by kind of actually breaking that down, but we've noticed in the industry there are kind of maybe two models of how list generation services happen. The one model we see is like, hey, here's a giant list of all the leads, or here's on a monthly basis, we're sending you X number of leads for X dollars. Also the directory route, where here's a whole database of things that you can then search by and then pull the leads that you want for, X amount. Do you have a blend of those two things happening, or
Yeah,
is it like all leads and directory? Can you like explain
sure.
the model of which people get leads from you, I guess?
Well, actually, that's all three that you just mentioned.
Okay,
So,
great, good.
the four subscriptions, five subscription, four, the four subscription services I just mentioned, you basically
Yeah.
get handed PDFs twice a month by
Okay.
email. Then we have directories like our regional directory, where we'll give you 1,500 to 3,000 speaker leads just in your market. You can get that you download that all at one time as an Excel file. The same thing happens with our niche directories. But if and things like the TEDx and our virtual networking, you download it once, you own it. And then our new conference finder is where you go into the table, find your category, and then you can see the ones that are right for you, and download just that section. And we've got 60 different categories and subcategories, so it should be pretty easy to see if you want business, and then if you want a particular industry, it's really download. Or if you want personal growth or health and wellness, any of the other categories that make sense for leaders.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So they get to choose their best mode, it sounds like. That's cool.
Yeah, and the best kinds of speaking stages for them. That's
Right.
really what the choice is going to be, not the mode so much.
Okay.
That we're locked into the modes that we have, but it's really designed to serve a particular audience, each one of those.
Nice.
Not
That
everybody,
makes sense.
is going to want podcasts, and
Right.
other people are going to want conferences. So we've given it to them in the best way that we can assemble the information.
It's a lot of information, so I imagine it's a tough job sometimes to figure out how the best method is going to be used given the data set that you're working with. I
Well,
Mhm.
I can't help but wonder, like,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing is, it all has to be kept fresh. So, but sometimes with some of those directories, like the regionals and the specialty directories, we know that people are going to find stuff that's out of date. It's just the nature of the beast, even though we're constantly updating and we do a refresh every year on each one of them. So, but we tell people all you have to do is send an email to updates at speakertunity.com with whatever you find it's out of date, and we'll update it for you, because we believe this is a relationship. This is not, here's your directory and sayonara. It's
Mhm.
something that we're there to help continue to be of service. And we always want to make sure people have value.
Yeah.
That's a concern I know a lot of people have, so I'm glad that you touched on that. Do you find that there's like a right time / place / set of preparations that are already done that like make somebody a good fit for this type of lead generation service? Like who would be qualified to work with you, do you find?
Anybody that needs to get in front of an audience to grow a business. I mean, essentially, most of
Nice.
our resources are for what I would call speak to enroll or speak to sell leaders who need to get in front of a stage. But now that we've got conference connections, now we really have things for keynoters as well. And so that kind of elevates us to add that element to people. But for the last several years, it's mostly been people we serve that are growing a business through their speaking, as opposed to being professional speakers. And so I think that that's really the common denominator of the majority of our clients. And now, of course, we're adding on the keynoters as this being another resource for them as well.
Yeah.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So
So
one oh, Austin, you go. I know we have so many questions, so
I know we do, yeah.
our gears are spinning. So you go first.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm thinking like from the perspective of somebody that might be like earlier on in their business where outreach really has to be the primary way that revenue is being driven. That also means that that person may not be very seasoned as a
Mhm.
salesperson at that point in the process. And so certainly there's an amount of just experience and as I mentioned a minute ago, iteration that has to happen to sort of improve those skills. But if I were in your shoes running Speakertunity, one of the concerns that I would be like our decision makers that we're doing research on are getting spammed by a bunch of people that are unskilled salespeople that are more or less just filling their inbox with I would say junk stuff that's not relevant to them. So is that something that you find happens, or like what is the mechanism that you use to protect the decision makers that you're researching from getting spammed, more or less?
Well, I don't think, it's not we don't feel it's our mission to actually um, police the quality
Hmm.
level of the person who is buying our resources. But
Mm.
we rather help them along and help get better, which is why we develop the training programs that basically says, here's how to write your pitch letter. Here's how to follow up on that phone call. So they're not hounding people. And we also have a booking system that basically we give them some templates of what the lead, the should look like. And the one thing we also haven't talked about yet is our strategic partner, Book for You Virtual Assistants. So if somebody is really not yet to the point, or either to the point where they're not confident in doing it themselves, or they're overwhelmed and they don't have enough time to do it themselves. We aligned ourselves with a company called Book for You Virtual Assistants. And what they're going to ask for is they're going to ask for a speaker one sheet. And of course, that's a service that we can provide. And you don't even have to think about what to put in. We'll tell you what to give us. So, we're really guiding you to give us the best stuff. And then they're going to want, what are your speaking presentations, and what is your background, and they'll write the pitch letter that they can send to those. Once you get a directory from us, they will take that and they will go follow up that directory with the materials that you've given them. The other thing is you can also come to them with a list, and they will go and they pursue those opportunities as well. And these VAs, this is all they do. They don't do other VA work. They just go and pitch people either to any of the different kinds of services, everything from podcasts to the regional directories or the niche directories or conferences. They'll sit there and fill out all those conference forms, the calls for speakers, so that you don't have to do that, and then submit you the ones that actually give you a human being to do that. But they'll have the materials. They'll make sure that it's quality before they go doing that. So that's, those
Yeah.
are the ways that we're trying to basically up level the quality of materials that these speaking opportunities are receiving.
That's awesome. Yeah. What another example of you just matching what the market needs, and then creating a service for it. That's really cool. So
Thank you.
can we talk about that the booking service just a little bit more? I
Mhm,
want to unpack like the process that maybe they follow, or someone, if they were doing it themselves, should follow
mhm.
to like take a lead, and what the next logical step usually is get a sales conversation on the books, I would imagine.
Well,
So the Book for You Now, do they follow up until that happens? Is there a particular cadence? Do you design that with them as the speaker when you work with the Book for You Now? Are they only sending the first touch point out? Like, what's the process, or
okay.
is there one that they might follow
Oh
to?
no, it's very specific. And they are following a lot of what you would do on your own. So the
Right.
first thing is they have a sit down meeting with you, and they
Uh,
determine what are the assets that you're sending. So you would have your own pitch letter to go if you were doing it on your own, and it should only be about 5 to 7 paragraphs. The rest of the information should be in the speaker sheet. They'll sit down with you, really kind of get that information from you. And I strongly encourage people to have three different presentations, because if you have only one arrow in your quiver, it had better be a bullseye. If you have three, then you're going to give people choice. And you're going to give the bookers a choice to what to submit where, if it's a conference situation. But if it's a letter, they're likely to list, hey, here are the three things that he or she can talk on.
mhm.
So that'll go out. to the individuals by email, which is something where you would start. And then in their case, mostly they do some phone following up. But today, most people don't give their phone numbers if they're bookers. Or if they do, they give an office number that doesn't ring through to their cell phone. So phone calling is not nearly as effective as it used to be. So the next place that they go is LinkedIn or Facebook Messenger. And that's where they're doing a lot of their follow-up. And that's where they're getting them a lot of times if the booker has not responded all the way back by email. So, and that is exactly the follow-up procedure that I would recommend to anybody that is going to do this on their own. And of course, when Book For You gets the meeting, gets the interest, they basically set up the meeting. They don't do the negotiations themselves because
right, of course, yeah, just
they're
get the
virtual
sales call
assistants.
booked.
They're not,
You wouldn't want them to do that anyway.
Exactly. They're going to make a meeting between the person who's interested and the client. And then from that point forward, it moves forward. Now, they're going to also, some of these organizations will say to them, please fill out the form. And we'll let you know if we're, interested. And then the meeting might happen after that point.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what's like, I don't know, an average number of touch points that you've seen throughout your time helping people navigate this, and what you recommend in your training for, before you stop following up with a lead?
Before you start following up with a lead?
Before you stop following up with a lead. Like how many touch points would you?
I have a rule of 3 when it comes to phone calls and emails. So it's either 1 email and 2 phone calls, or it's 2 phone calls and 1 email.
Gotcha.
So, one of 3. And then once you get past that point, then 1 touch point on LinkedIn, 1 touch point on Facebook Messenger. And if you're done, if you don't get a response after that, you're done.
Nice. So 5 touch points.
5 total.
That's healthy. Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
is there a point that you'd recommend recycling? Was there a point that you would recommend somebody recycle these leads that you have? Like, say somebody buys that list, they're the directory of conferences, right? And they reach out this year. Do you recommend that they then go back after it the following year and keep doing the outreach? Or would you say if you've reached out and they didn't get back to you, that you just leave that in the past and go find somebody else to reach out to?
It may just be a matter of the subject matter isn't a match. So if you've got another subject matter 6 months later, then go back after them. Give them something different. And here's another thing too. It's sometimes when you pitch. So example, some meetings, some organizations fill their calendar in the last 3 months of the previous year and the first month of the first year. And then they don't do any more filling until November, December comes around the next year. So if you hit them at the wrong time, it isn't necessarily the fact that they've rejected you. It's just that they don't have space for you right now. So if it's something you really want to do, mark down when they're rebooking and then start then. My team, the team at Book For You virtual assistants right now have a whole series of things that they've been reaching out to on behalf of clients all year long. And they have said, okay, return in September, return in October. And they'll start on those now to try to get those people booked for next year.
Nice. That's an important note to make. Yeah. The decision-making window is tough. And I think that people forget that. Like, you're not reaching out to the conference a month before it happens. You need to be thinking about that 3 to 6 months in advance, probably, if not within the given decision-making window they've already expressed they're looking at for you. People fall down on this subject, I think.
Well, and most conferences have a specific window. And so they'll tell you what the deadline is. So if you've missed it, just make note of when it reopens for the next year and be there at the beginning, because the people at the beginning get more consideration than the people at the end. And that's really especially true of a TEDx. So be early, as early in the process as you possibly can.
I love that. So help us. I know I'm asking myself this personally. I'm sure our listeners are thinking about this too, but like, what are some realistic expectations that people should have from this type of outreach, And I think I'd love to look at this from probably 2 perspectives, because you made a good point earlier that there's definitely a segment of people that you're working with that are like going after paid speaking opportunities. There's also a segment of people that are going after just speaking opportunities for the sake of marketing whatever else it is that they're selling. So we might have to make a differentiation between those two things. But like in a perfect world, somebody grabs your databases, potentially hires this VA team. We could talk about if they wanted to do it themselves separately, but let's say they get your databases, they hire the VA team to do outreach. Like, what should somebody expect to be getting out of that?
Well, the hope is to get like one a month.
Nice.
That's solid.
Sales
Um,
sales call is one a month, right?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
good.
Not a
And
confirmed gig, but like a sales call on the books.
exactly. And
Okay,
I'll just
nice.
give you, I mean, some of the people we work with, it's a challenge to get them because their topics are kind of generic, and we try to get them to make it more distinctive and unique. And we tell them also that your title needs to have an outcome. What
Mm,
is the actual outcome that you are going to have from this? And so that it really speaks to something that's needed. So sometimes we'll tell them to tweak their subject matter, but in some cases we've got one gal that we've got, five women that already set up, and a bunch of other women's groups. We've got one guy we've had 30 different organizations interested in him.
wow.
The problem is that his asking price was too high.
Mm,
And most of these organizations couldn't deal with his asking price, so we've asked him to reduce it. And now we're going back to those people, but a lot of them had some serious interest. There were almost 35 people on the list that said they wanted to book the guy if they could come to some kind of terms.
wow.
Wow.
Are there any patterns you notice between those that like get higher outcomes from this than lower? Like, is it simply a matter of that title having the outcome? Like in those two examples you provided, what do you think was the differentiator from, them and getting as many sales meetings on the books versus, let's say, the standard one per month?
Well, I think you have to be niched.
Hmm.
If you have a really generic title, there's a lot of competition and it's harder to get anybody booked.
Sure.
But if you have a very specific niche and you can zero in on that niche, women's business meetings, from here to here, or you're looking for health and wellness, or organizations, or or something that's really specific to a and your topic really applies to that audience. Things that have to do with anti-aging for people that are a certain age. You're going to go looking for things that are really right for that audience and be very specific with it. That helps a lot. I mean, if you
Yeah.
the real key is differentiating yourself, because if you just sound like everybody else, then you're going to have a hard time getting
Can't
booked.
make a decision. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Pondering.
I know, right? There's so much good stuff here. And I mean,
Yeah,
you're
for real.
seeing it at scale
Gears are
too, which
spinning.
is cool.
Yeah, which is
Those,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, the patterns are super valuable for people. Um, so I'm like on the topic of, I don't know, differentiation, I guess. Like, eh, I see so many people taking like a list that they get from wherever they may get it. And then it ends up being like a spray and pray approach, I guess you could say. We load a bunch of emails into a day. We see this because we're on the technical side of it, right? So we see people's CRMs and what they're doing before we start working with them. But import a giant list of 1,000 names into a CRM, start sending out mass emails to the entire list. We find that the conversion rates on those tend to be very low, if there's a conversion rate at all. So, what's your take on like the quality versus quantity approach in this regard?
Well, the simple answer is, if you send a personalized note to somebody, you're more likely to get it, get a
Hmm.
response than if you blast them. I mean, it's just simple mathematics. You may get one or two if you do the blast, but you certainly will have a much more challenging time getting a serious response. So I definitely believe that either you do one-on-ones, or you do a small list of, very specific ones, and just
Mm,
blast to that in particular group. If you're
mhm,
going to really focus on doing that. Yeah,
for sure.
it's a really good point. Austin.
I think that's a good tip.
For sure. Yeah. Make notes, everybody. Don't spray and pray. Fun fact, actually, Austin, you said we have to import 1,000 leads and they're never going to we imported just like last week, 70,000 leads, 70,000 for an individual who just had 30 different spreadsheets basically of information that isn't going to be touched, right? And how do you prioritize 70,000 leads, guys? Volume is not the thing that you need. It's definitely the quality, and to Jackie's point, be personalized if you can, or hyper personalized in a smaller segment of that list. And also, if you recall, listeners, I'm talking to you here, Jackie mentioned that there's at least a 5 touch point follow-up process here, right? If you send one email, your first outreach, to let's say 1,000 people, how are you going to manage the follow-up 5 more times with phone calls, LinkedIn messages, and Facebook? Because you can't spray and pray 1,000 people on LinkedIn. You're going to have to do that manually. So what I want you to take away from this portion of our conversation here is it's actually preferential to be methodical. And if you're taking this on yourself, there's only so much time in the day you have to commit to doing new business development. So don't overload yourself. It can be appealing to send a mass email button to 1,000 people, but if you can't handle 1,000 follow-ups come next week, well, you might find yourself in a little bit of a bind. Is that fair, Jackie?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
For sure. Heck yeah. Well, this has been super awesome, Jack. Thank you for letting us pick your brain about this. I think this has probably been the most transparent conversation we've had about list generation and how to effectively do it. And it's incredible all the resources you've created for people to be able to tap into and maybe not have them have to do it themselves and have some help in the process. So super awesome. Obviously, you're all about creating value for your audience. So what are some of the cool things you're working on right now that our listeners can benefit from?
Well, I've just done a very cool masterclass called 5 Simple Steps to Secure a Steady Stream of Conference and Event Stage Appearances. And so I'd love to have that.
Nice.
Then, thank you. The next one is called 10 Speaker Bookings in 10 Days. And it's going to give you a really fabulous strategy on how to really get that going if you're looking for meetings, venues, and associations. And then the last thing is, now on almost all of these, you really should have a free gift offer, kind of like we're doing right here. And so most people think of it as a simple ebook or book me for a consult or, conversation. But there are actually 44 different ways that you can seduce your next client, from stage, podcast, radio shows, virtual summits, and virtual networking. And that's what it's called. So you can go there and grab this. It is a very cool ebook that is going to make it really simple and easy for you to start collecting new clients. So those are all great things. And I just want to invite people to come on over to Speakertunity, connect with us, nose around, set up a meeting. We'd love to see if we can help and support you.
Heck yeah. Well, all of those links, you guys, will be in the show notes as usual. So be sure to go and check those out. Jackie, thank you again for coming on to Technically Speaking. This was an awesome episode. And everyone, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.